Hi, everyone. Today on the podcast, we are talking with award winning producer, filmmaker, and social impact leader from INDIEFLIX and the INDIEFLIX Foundation, Scilla Andreen.
But I was listening in the world differently. And I was hearing stories that were changing me. And I thought, if I could share these stories with other people, maybe would it have the same kind of opening heart effect? And so I thought, I'm going to give it a shot. So Race to Be Human is my latest film. And it's about the effects of racism on our mental health.
Welcome to the Social Impact Podcast, where people like you and I are making sustainable change throughout the world. Learn why they do it and how you can be a change maker in your community and across the globe. Each week, we hear from people on their social issue and what compels them to make an impact. Hi, my name's Bree Jensen, and I am the host of the podcast. Today, we have special guest Scilla Andreen, who is the CEO and co-founder of INDIEFLIX and an award-winning producer, director, Emmy-nominated costume designer, author, and founder of INDIEFLIX Foundation. She has produced and or directed such films as Angst, like The Upstanders, Screenagers, The Empowerment Project, and Nevertheless. Currently, she is directing her latest project, which I'm incredibly excited for, Race, a documentary about the effects of race and racism on our mental health. She is a mother of 6 and resides with her husband, Eric, in Seattle, Washington, where I lived for 20 years, so I love Seattle. She lives on a mission to change the world with film. You can find her at indieflix.com, and she really is doing incredible things through the power of media. So let's start the conversation. Scilla, thank you so much for joining the Social Impact Podcast. This is the first season, as you know, so we're very excited that you would say yes. And I can't wait to talk about all the things that INDIEFLIX is doing through making an impact in education and social responsibility and all that good stuff. So thank you so much for taking some time with us.
Well, thanks for having me. And congratulations on doing this. I'm so glad you're doing this. I love it.
Yeah, we met a few years ago when I was my core social issue was digital well-being, and you were so kind to have a conversation with me. That's when I think the Like film came out, and I see that there's new things coming about. Do you have updates on the Like film and the reach and all that?
I do. I just filmed, I did some filming. We're kind of doing an add-on to it. So we're not actually cutting it into the movie because it would actually change the age of the audience appropriateness, but we're going to address TikTok because TikTok wasn't quite where it was at the time we released the film, and sexting and pornography. And I think that was something that I felt like if I had that in the movie, then the audience age would have to come further up. And then I've learned so much recently that I thought, oh, I have a duty to share this information with students first and parents, actually all of them, everyone at first. We just need this information and how important it is to be able, at the end of the day, it's really about having great communication. If you're waiting to have age appropriate conversations with your kids, if you're waiting for them to come to you, it's too late.
Yes.
You need to have them, you need to initiate it as the parent.
Yes. I was always preaching that back in the day when I first started, that this is really, with social media and the digital world, it feels like we're always on the defense as parents. And so trying to kind of like maintain getting ahead of the game and being an offensive parent and getting on top of things. I'm actually still doing digital well-being coaching for families, and I'm seeing a ton, and I'm sure you are too, of these group conversations that go awry, and it's with the whole class or the whole school. And then there's like a sexting incident, and then parents are coming to me like, what do I do? And I'll ask them, have you had these kind of hard conversations that are really kind of like the sex talk? Like, what have you seen online, and how do you treat others? And they're really uncomfortable, but they need to be brought to parents' attention as like part of parenting now in 2021. So I'm just really thankful for all that you're doing in the movie and the toolkit. You're always so great at bringing awareness to social issues in a way that really is a catalyst to a conversation. Do you mind sharing kind of your catalyst and your story of how you even got into becoming a social issue filmmaker and what initially started INDIEFLIX?
Sure. None of it was planned, or I guess it was part of a master plan that just has been unfolding for me. But I actually really love the law, and I wanted to be a litigator. So I was at NYU studying political science. Always loved law shows and things.
Interesting.
And I was really bullied as a kid. So I spent a lot of time watching TV. I lived in a little mountain town in Colorado, and I didn't really have any friends. Don't feel sorry for me. It's okay. I had a dog, and I had great parents, and I watched a lot of TV, law shows. But when I was in New York, I met a director, and he needed help on a commercial, and I went and helped him, and I made money. Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm working 3 jobs, going to college, and here I got a job, and I made $800 a day. And I got my first taste of like being around cameras and film. And we worked so well together. I went on to do a lot of commercials with him and just learned about casting and editing and story. So I dropped out of college, and then I ended up kind of segueing over to television, and I did the Wonder Years as the costume designer, Party of Five, Dawson's Creek, Smallville, What I Like About You. That was my career. And then during my sort of hiatus, because we always are off for a couple months, I started producing and directing short films, feature films, going around to the festival circuit, and then ended up starting INDIEFLIX as a marketplace for filmmakers, because there's so many great films out there that Hollywood didn't have the bandwidth to pick up. So that sort of became like my main gig. And I learned a lot about, the distribution side of the business and streaming and how do you get people to watch stuff. And then a little film crossed my desk about bullying. And I'd been really bullied as a kid. So it really resonated with me. And I thought, this should not be watched online. This should be watched in person. How am I going to get anyone to come to the theater? So I took it to one of my kids' schools, and it was such a powerful experience. And it really transformed that school, like within 90 minutes. Before we could start figuring out how to bring it to more schools started calling us. Wow. And suddenly we were doing that. And then they were saying, what else have you got? And then they're like, we need discussion guides. We need marketing materials. We need more classroom discussion guides to keep it going. And I was just like, so suddenly we're creating all these things.
Right.
And then I did Screenagers. And that kind of opened up things even bigger. And then I did Angst. A friend of mine had asked me to make a movie about mental health. I didn't want to do it. She said, kids are struggling right now. Parents are struggling. You need to make a movie about mental health. And I was just like, I don't think anyone wants to talk about that. And, me being Chinese, we didn't talk about it. And so I avoided it. And then, a year went by, and I saw her once a week. And then I found out in January that I got a call that she had died by suicide.
Oh, wow.
And, she had children and a family. And I just thought, I knew she was struggling, but I didn't know it was that bad. So I chose to make Angst, the first movie about mental health. And we made it. And then schools were actually they weren't booking it. They were afraid that if they brought it into their schools, they only had one counselor, and they didn't want this counselor to be overrun with students. Right. They also didn't have a lot of program in place to support the conversation. So it took about 6 months before schools started to actually book it. And once that started happening, we realized there was almost this kind of communal therapeutic effect, and people started opening up and talking to each other. And maybe a few more kids went to the counselor, but mostly people started opening up and talking to their coaches or their best friend's mom or to each other. And then it just went like wildfire. And we've done over 10,000 screenings around the world. Wow. And from that, they're like, okay, what else have you got? So then where you and I come in together is with because people thought why is there so much anxiety? Like, what's going on?
Right.
Is there more, or is it the same and we're talking about it? So I kind of wanted to answer that question. So like actually delves deep into what's really going on. Why is that sort of addiction piece in there? And then there's always really cool hacks, like how you can disrupt your own behavior and create a better, healthier relationship with your devices and with some of the social media. So that was really fun. And then people were saying, this is great, but why are people so mean online when they wouldn't be that way in person? And that's where the bullying thing kind of re-emerged for me. And so I thought, I'm going to make a movie about cyberbullying because it's just so different than the old-fashioned physical bullying, even though they go so hand in hand.
Right.
And what I ended up making a movie about was resilience and community and belonging. And of course, we always tie it back to what's kind of happening in the brain when all these things are going on, because when you understand the science behind what's going on, you can actually find ways to push through it or beyond it or understand what's happening. And then, of course, COVID hit and George Floyd, and people asked me to make a movie about racism. And I was like, kind of like my angst days. I was like, no, I wouldn't even know how to make that movie. But I was listening in the world differently. And I was hearing stories that were changing me. And I thought, if I could share these stories with other people, maybe would it have the same kind of opening heart effect? And so I thought, I'm going to give it a shot.
Amazing. And I'm going to circle back to that because I just really love the project and I want to learn more from you and what you've learned by making this film. But when you're sharing the story, I personally worked for 2 organizations that did school assemblies or school programming. One was on anxiety. So I would teach students classroom to classroom on kind of like triggers and warning signs and how to have resilience through those challenges. And then the other side was, with Rachel's challenge was the anti-bullying and school safety and traveled the country. And both were incredibly impactful. So I don't want to take anything away from those. However, I am curious about your perspective on the influence and the immediate kind of catalyst of a ripple effect with documentaries and video, because I do see such an incredible kind of like mic drop moment with these stories and with video. So do you have some insights with that and what you're seeing with kind of like the ripple effects of the conversations?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think film is the most powerful medium on the planet. And I think, music is too, right? The thing about film is there's a visual, there's an auditory aspect, and then there's the feeling and the story. So you can actually when I think about the elements of our films, we are modeling pain. We're modeling hurt and struggle. So people feel like they're not alone. And that's a really powerful thing to realize. Oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one. I'm not broken. This is this happens to a lot of people. We model how to ask for help. We model how to respond when asked for help, but it's woven into story. So it's not tutorial. And so you realize you're getting all this education, all this information, and it's going into your, for me, because I was, watched a lot of TV as a kid because I didn't have friends. That was like the people in my life. And, in those days there was no serial killers and, all this sort of bad, negative stuff. It was very like positive, kind of unrealistic nuclear families and stuff, but it was more wholesome. And I grew up with a really wholesome sort of mindset of the world. And I still have it today. It's helped shape who I am. Wow. But I think film is so powerful, whether it's 2 minutes, whether it's 2 hours, whether it's a music video, whatever it is, I just feel like it creates this feeling and then it stays with you. So then you build on that through conversation, which is truly the most powerful aspect of it. The best part of watching in a community is, even if you just know that community, everybody was assigned to watch it or something, we talk later, is now think about when, I don't know I can't think of the movie right now, but when popular movie comes out and everybody's talking about it. You could talk to a
Mhm.
stranger about it, right?
Right.
And we're connecting and we're sharing,
Yes.
we're learning about each other. That is the part I really love to cultivate. I love sharing these micro stories with experts and,
Mhm.
from brain science to mental health to educators and parents. And people find themselves in these stories and
Mhm.
learn. And so I think that is the drop mic powerful
Yep.
moment.
Yeah.
And they walk away. The greatest conversation is in the car on the way home after good old fashioned physical in-person screenings. Now it's the screenings that we can do also virtually because we can do both. But it's the conversation that keeps going.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And how do you think people find, especially say like a middle schooler, like a seventh grader, how do they find that safe person to talk to after they've seen your film?
I think because again, there's some modeling of who that safe person could be,
Yeah.
whether it's a counselor or a coach or your best friend's mom or your parents. It kind of gives you the language to be able to say, well, this is what we've heard a lot, which is another reason why to watch in the same community is that a student could go to a counselor or a teacher or a friend and
Mhm.
say, the girl that was wearing the pink sweater, I have felt that. Or do you remember the boy with Michael Phelps? I have
Mhm.
felt that. Like they don't even need to say, I have dark thoughts, or I feel
Right.
like
They
I
don't
have
have to articulate it.
they don't have to say I have anxiety or I think
Hmm.
something's wrong with me. They don't have to say those scary words. They can point. Or the next biggest thing is people say, I really want my dad to see this so he knows I'm not making it up. Or
Yes.
parents, this is the number one parent thing. Oh my God, I wish I had this film as a kid growing up. I would not have
Right.
self-medicated. I would have had more understanding and compassion for myself. And the second biggest comment from parents is, oh my gosh, I've been so hard on my kid. Like, I just need to
Mm.
listen to them. And can
Yes.
I just say one thing that I feel like
Yeah.
there's this misconception that, and I hear this a lot, and I realize it's such a subtle thing, but people will say, oh my God, so-and-so is always saying they have anxiety or they're overwhelmed or, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Like the whole world is like suddenly has anxiety and they're paralyzed and they can't do things. I'm like, if we could just remember that when someone tells you they're struggling, they're
Hmm.
not asking to get out of something. They're asking for help to get through something.
Mm.
And I think we tend to fall into this pattern of assuming, oh, well, okay, so they can't do that. It's like, no, they want to do it and they're being courageous and sharing with you. Can you help me get through it?
Yes. Yes. Such a great insight. My core social issue right now is healing from trauma. And mainly because, it's hard to share like a whole life story in about 30 seconds. But my dad passed away 2 years ago, just last week. And I believe he had struggled from undiagnosed mental health challenges due to trauma as a child, and therefore impacted his ability to make good choices, his ability to stay centered, and it rippled effect into his children. That story is not unique. I think that many people have that story, and providing access to these tools that you're providing for young people that maybe have experienced trauma or going through a challenge, and identifying it and starting these conversations are so huge.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit of some of the stories that you're hearing, like maybe your brief impact report from the films, making kind of these aha moments so that there isn't that generational challenge?
Yeah. And I'm sorry about your dad. It's never easy. It's funny. My world since making these films is like my kids will always say, please don't go all Oprah on people. Like you're meeting my boyfriend's parents. Can you just talk about the weather? Like, do you have to deep dive into,
Yeah.
adverse childhood experiences
Right.
and paralyzing anxiety or debilitating depression and isolation, suicide ideation? Like, don't go there. And I'm like, okay.
Yes. Kind of hard not to, and that's who you are.
Normalizing my life. And I
Yes.
told them, I'm like, I don't start the conversation. They just say, what do you do? And I say, I make these films, and then suddenly I'm in like almost like a therapist role, and they start sharing, like, what have you learned? We'll do this because I felt that and that. I learned so much that, of course we're going to end up hugging. And, I get to share like all these wonderful, like cognitive behavioral therapy tools. And
yes.
Gosh, when you can push through and reach out for help, or just watching something and knowing, I'm not alone.
Right.
There's like this sense of relief. And, but then you can't just do it like the one, you got to like have community to continue to help that chemical release on the brain, and to learn about different exercises and things you can do, or fun things that can help sort of like keep your brain in a good place.
Yeah.
And it's real. It works, whether it's tapping, like instant snapping, ice cubes, journaling, music, dance, breathing, standing outside on the grass instead of concrete, chemical release on the brain, like all these wonderful things, all free. And that, like, I wish people knew more about the power of that.
Yeah, it does. And it gives them the resource. Your films give the educators, the parents, the students, all resource to have these conversations, because a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm saying this on social media, or I'm doing this, or I've heard these like buzzwords, but I don't know what to do with that. So, thank you for the films and for the toolkits and everything that you're resourcing schools with. I think that's incredible. And I'm wondering, kind of little tidbits of your expertise, how people, social change makers or social entrepreneurs, people wanting to use social media for good, can create these kind of micro stories and do in their own world, if they're not a professional filmmaker, if they want to be on social media, to kind of like create these impact stories.
There's so much opportunity for people of any age and any sort of extensive or limited talent or skill set. Having a phone, if you have a phone,
right,
you can tell a story. And even if you draw, if what your thing is drawing or painting or singing or whatever it is, or a poem, you can, if you can record it or somehow share it through social media, you have so many different ways that you can share positivity. And I got to tell you, like, that's the secret. I have learned in making Race to Be Human that there's a lot of pain in the world, but there's way more love and way more hope. But we don't get to see that because the airwaves are filled with negativity, because that's what seems to get people rubbernecking, people listening, people saying, stopping in their tracks because there's a big uh-oh, right? And we need to change the brain. We need to retool and get more excited about something great that's happening.
Yes.
And gosh, we're so starved for that when they show like the last 30-second piece of a news whole segment is a good deed that someone did. Yes. And we're all like emotional, and we're like, oh my God.
Cry. Like, yes.
Wouldn't it be amazing if all the news? And I also think there's ways to frame anything. My nickname is Fortune Cookie. And everyone's like, you are so freaking positive. It's ridiculous. Like, it's not realistic. And I just feel like I challenge myself every day in every way to find the good in every experience. And people are like, there's nothing good when thousands of people are dying. There's nothing good when, like, there's all these situations where people can only see one aspect of it.
Yes.
But as human beings, as we have story, as there is conflict, as there is joy and love and birth and death, you have to turn it around and look at it from different angles.
Yes.
And choose to look at it from a place that can bring you comfort and even joy. And that's a reach sometimes, but we have that opportunity in every single experience. Like, we lost one of our children. She died on her birthday. Where do you find the good in that? Right? Well, we had to do a crowdfunding campaign because we didn't have the money to bring her home to put her in this trial. She was in Ireland. Wow. So we did this crowdfunding campaign, and within 48 hours, we had the money to bring her home. Wow. We never got her home because she went through so many other things and ended up dying. So what's the good in that, right? we were so floored and overflowing with love from all over the world, from strangers. And unbelievable things that people did to express their love and comfort and concern. And she couldn't believe it. Like, she was blown away. And we have so much love now from that experience that we are overflowing with love. And all we can think of is helping others. So we chose that path with this, but we always have a choice to find a gift in everything.
Yes. Yes. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that story. And there's really no words that I have other than, thank you for sharing. And I see you, and I'm so sorry that you went through that in your family, and what an incredible reframing and perspective that we can all learn from, is to live in that gratitude and finding the good in every situation. So thank you so much. I want to ask you about advocacy, because I could be wrong, and please correct me if you're wrong. If I'm wrong, not you're wrong. If I'm wrong, I see kind of this underlying advocacy, activism, just bringing a voice to these challenges in a lot of your work. How do people become an advocate for their social issue?
That's a great question. I've never really heard that one before. It's funny. We have a foundation. I have a foundation, the iNDIEFLIX Foundation. I never dreamed I'd have a foundation. Like, I can't believe it. I'm so grateful I do, because we can do such good with it. I was never like someone who marched. I was never someone who signed petitions. I was never like, I cocooned, like I was kind of trying to lay low, I'd been bullied, and then I was a bystander, and I was like, just wanted to keep my nose to the ground, be invisible, mind my own business. I didn't get involved in things, but I spent a lot of time watching and listening, because I love people, and I love their stories, and I love observing people. And I think when you connect with yourself, and you start to realize what matters to me, right? And it's confusing, because I used to have people say, oh, follow your passion. I'm like, well, I'm passionate about a lot of things. I'm passionate about watching TV. So is that what I should do?
Yes.
Like, I don't understand what that means. Follow your passion. I still don't. Right. Like, it's like, but I think when we cannot move so fast in the world, and not just be doing this every waking moment, and we learn to have moments of stillness with ourselves to think about, what do we care about? What brings us the greatest joy? And I think that's probably where I started, was what would bring me the greatest satisfaction or joy? As crazy and ridiculous as it is, right? Dream as big as or as small as you want. Maybe all it is you want to have a little garden in your backyard. Awesome. Maybe it's world peace. I don't even know what that means. World peace, right?
Yes.
In charge of world peace. But I started thinking, like, what matters to me? And I think when I was bullied as that kid, sort of locked in the cupboard in the classroom, I started to think about, if these kids just knew me a little bit, they wouldn't hate me so much. That was my belief system in third grade. And they just hated me because the way I looked, because I'm Chinese. And it was an all-white community in Breckenridge, Colorado. And I started to think about how important it is to really see people and get to know a little bit of their story, because we're all human beings. We're all equal in that way.
Yeah.
But yet we don't really. So that's kind of how I'm wired. Like, when I see a homeless person on the ground and sleeping or begging or whatever they're doing, my brain, and maybe because I'm a filmmaker, instantly goes back to them, like Benjamin Button, like they suddenly start to get younger and younger and younger until they're in the arms of their mother, perfectly healthy, with the hope of the world ahead of them. Everything is at their, like, for them to have. And I think, what's their story? Like, what happened there? And I have compassion. But to get back to your question about advocacy, I think in order to really be an advocate for anything in life, you've got to connect with yourself and learn what's important to you. And and then look at things that serve that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
And then show up, volunteer, see how you can help. That's the other thing is, as much as you may think, I have no money, I have no time, I have no ability to give, you actually do.
Mm.
And it might be an idea. It might be a smile. It might be an introduction, but you always have something to give. And if nothing else, you have love to give. And so if you show up and you say, what can I do to help? And if they go, well, we need this. I'm like, no, I can't do that. What else do you need? What else could I do? Like there's just always a way to help.
I do want to talk to you about the new project, about just, I'm really excited to learn from you. I feel like we can have like a whole second chapter, second podcast on this new film, but do you want to share a little more about what we can expect?
I didn't want to make a movie that was political, and I didn't want to do a history lesson. And in a lot of my interviews, I got the history lesson, and I got the make sure you add about the health care disparities and the voting disparities. And the laundry list was long of all the things I needed to include in the film. And it reminded me of when I made Like, and everyone's like, I hope you're going to call out government and the platforms and how they're, abusing their power. And I was just like, no, I don't do that. Those things take too long. Those things, I don't feel like I can affect change. What I feel like I can help people, individuals with, is finding a way safely to make change within yourself. And I think, to me, that's where I am the most comfortable. So the film is really, I go out and I just start filming lots of people. And people always say, how do you find the people in the movies? I just I don't even, I put out a call. I'm like, would you want to talk to me? Sure, I'll talk to you. What are the questions? I'm not going to tell you the questions. I'm just going to ask you like 20 questions. And you can always say, don't use it, or I can say it differently or whatever. And I really go around and I film and I just start listening because I don't know what the script is. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know anything. I'm just collecting information. And through the stories, I start to learn what's happening, and I see commonalities. And so I filmed about 100 people. I was in Hong Kong, UK, across the country, Canada. And I started to learn about kind of things that are going on. And, it's all straight from the heart. There's no pre-interview. They don't see the questions. And then I get in the editing room and we just weave that story together. And for Race to Be Human, I broke it down into chapters because I realized there's a lot of confusion in the world. Not everybody really understands what allyship is. Not everyone knows what microaggressions are. Some people don't really quite understand privilege. And then also, what is the true definition of racism? And so breaking it all down, and then also what can we do? What can schools do? What can work do? What can you as an individual do? What do you do as a white parent? Or so, but say you're a white family living in a white neighborhood and you go to a white school. How are you going to create diversity in your family? How are you going to introduce cross-racial friendships? What are you going to do? Right. So I wanted to have that kind of information for families. I want to know, what could schools do right now? Because we know there's bigger things that have to happen, but what can they do right now, tomorrow, to make a positive difference? What can work do? So everything in this movie is low-hanging fruit, things that we can do the minute it finishes screening and we've had our conversation. Well, it's interesting, right? We all want to talk about this. It's a big conversation. Well, so was Angst. So was mental health. And it took 6 months before anybody booked it because they were afraid. And it is still there. I had 2 schools in Silicon Valley that basically let us know, because we were in, the working title was just race, because I didn't have the title yet. And they said, oh gosh, too bad. We're really interested in your film, but because you're calling it race, we'd never show it because the title alone, we can't do that. And it's just okay. And then, there's schools in other parts of the country or the world that are just we can't open up this conversation. We are not prepared to have it.
Interesting.
And some of the parents don't want it. They're like, oh, you're bringing in critical race theory. I'm like, no, we're not. It's not that. So it's really interesting, but we'll see. I do think that there are schools that they get it and they know they got to show this and they got to open up that conversation. You know why? So people can take a deep breath and they cannot live in so much fear, not live in so much fear that the world will never change, not live in so much fear that you don't know how to communicate with someone. Like this will, I think, open it up to give us permission to be able to have more conversation.
Right. That's fantastic. And I'm wondering, what an incredible case study on, for example, when you did release Angst and the schools and areas that weren't ready for it. And now this is happening, obviously on a very different topic, but it would be such a fascinating research topic, maybe for like a grad program or a doctoral program to examine the communities that are all about it and the ones that aren't ready for it and how they even, follow them on how they begin to start the conversations and when they're ready for the film and all of that. I would be super interested in that. So that's fascinating to me.
I think it's fascinating that we have these words and we don't really understand where they came from. Think about Ring Around the Rosie, that little children's nursery rhyme. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. It's about kids getting, which disease was it?
I know what you're talking about.
And having ashes in their coal or ashes in their pockets to keep the smell of death away, and they die. And so we're like having fun singing these songs. We don't really know the origin.
Yes.
We go to, we go to Cinco de Mayo and we have, margaritas and tacos and chips and everything. But do we really know what we're celebrating here? Do we know what is it? Independence? What happened? When? What's the story? Like, so when we can learn the origin of words, when we can learn the origin of story and people, I think that helps us view the world differently. And I think it also makes our world richer. So being aware of our words, because words create worlds. And that's how we can sort of start. That's the bottom of the pyramid of hate is communication, early communication, microaggressions. If we can start changing things on that level, which we can do, you don't need money to do that. You don't need a big program. You don't need, to train up people. We all need to learn to be more aware of our words. And then I would also add our energy behind the words. Don't ask. If you want to ask someone, if you're curious about someone's background, a lot of people are like, how do you ask? Well, what are you? What are you really? Or where are you really from? Like that's actually a little offensive. You just say, what's your ethnicity? Super simple. That's your passport. That's your starter sentence. And then ask it with curiosity, not fear or judgment. And so like the energy behind your words is also incredibly important. Just like in sexual harassment, right? Oh, you look nice. Oh, you look nice, right? Like it's a different energy in how we deliver things. I don't think we can have rules where you're not allowed to say these things. There's different times that it's totally fine.
Yes.
But what's the context and what's the energy? Where's the dignity? Where's the respect? Where's the kindness? Like that has to be woven into all of it.
Yes. That's such a great point about what's your energy? What's the kindness behind it?
I'm always a fan of when there's a challenge or what feels like sometimes a blatant violation or abuse or something, it is an opportunity, as long as it's safe, right? There is an opportunity. Stop, take a breath, collect yourself, and use it as an opportunity to teach. It's like with parents, when you find out your kid's a bully, right? Oh my God. No, they're not. Whatever. And you go in the defensive. It's like, no, stop, collect yourself, go in, tell them how much you love them and what you love about them. And then say, are you okay? What's going on? It's true. And I also think like, even just in this whole, like the racism conversation, it's not just white people that need to be patient. It is everyone that needs to be patient. And I know people of color have been more than patient their whole lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But why stop now? Right when we have an opportunity, talking about it more than ever. We have technology to continue to keep the conversation going. Why stop now? Why say, oh, I've had a lifetime of it now, I'm not going to anymore? Like, no, sorry, that's our lot in life. We got to keep being patient because now more people are open to it, having this conversation and moving forward. Let's make a change. Don't get tired and give up now. Like, it's and it seems like an unfair ask, but I think it's important that we continue and we continue to move forward together.
Well, thank you for the film and helping people to continue to move forward, especially on the school level, the education level, where you are creating that systemic change from, I really believe in that social emotional education at the younger levels that will carry them throughout their lives. And so I'm really grateful for this film and the others that you've produced and put out there and started these conversations. And I can't wait to see the ripple effect of this film. Where can people find it? How do they get on board with everything?
Well, you can always go to iNDIEFLIX and you can find it there, like to learn about how you can see it. We're going to create a lot of different ways for people to access it. Of course, we always want it to be surrounded with some form of community or conversation. I'm putting together a tour to go to some of the public libraries in the country. I'll be going to some theaters as well, schools, corporations. So it'll be sort of disseminated through, like if a particular corporation is showing it, then those employees and their families will have access. If it's showing at a college, the college licenses it, all the students will have access. If it's showing so we've made it, our tools now are so much more evolved. We're able to deliver, the entire program in this wonderful experience with all the materials. And so it will be accessible. You just can't go to Netflix and watch it by yourself in your living room.
Right. No, I think this is going to be so great. And I'm going to follow the journey and post a lot about it and get it out there as much as I can as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I really believe in it. And I know I just kind of hit like such a tiny, tiny thing, but it was on my mind and I have so much to learn. Just as we close up, I have 3 rapid fire questions that I've been asking everyone. And so the first one, it's funny that they're rapid fire because they're big questions. The first one is, what is your purpose or motivation for change?
Because that's life. Life is changing anyway. Nothing is stagnant. You don't like the weather, it'll change. So I just am in the flow. I'm just with it. I'm not fighting it.
Love it. Love it. Okay. The next one is, what are your well-being tips? So many people that are change agents get burnt out and have to, take some time or whatnot, but do you have some tips?
Who's our audience?
This would be mainly millennials. Yep.
I'm a big meditator and I'm a big walker. So I love to meditate. I love to walk. I love to watch TV still.
Yeah.
And occasionally I like a good martini, and I'm a big time game player. I play a lot of, I'm very competitive and I love to play games and I love to laugh.
What's your favorite game?
Right now I'm really into Rummikub and it's Salad Bowl, which is kind of it's a little bit like $100,000 pyramid, only you play with groups.
Oh, interesting. I grew up playing Yahtzee with my grandma and it's still my favorite. My kids are like, this is boring. No, I love Yahtzee.
I love Yahtzee, cribbage, gin rummy.
Yes.
Love games.
That's great. And then the last one is, how can I, meaning those of us that are listening, make an impact in whether it's, our communities or our social groups or maybe at large?
I think, everybody's community is different. So, but always do something that you're comfortable with, right? You don't have to push yourself out of your comfort zone and go do something that you just would never want to do, right? Do something that you get joy out of, and do push yourself out of your comfort zone, meaning try new things. And sometimes the simplest things, honestly, whether it's picking up trash on the side of the road. I have, in the old days, we don't anymore, I have fed someone's meter, when you could do that.
Oh my gosh, that's cool.
I've given, a little money or advice to people living on the streets. Mm-hmm. I've never done the thing where you pay for the person behind you, but sometimes you can do some sort of, just start with good deeds, right? Like It feels good, and it creates this chemical release on the brain, and it kind of becomes addictive. And then you're like, what else can I do? And then it's okay to, it's so funny at Thanksgiving, like I want to take the kids all down to like work in the mission. Well, they didn't need any help. It was just like, wow, okay, so you got to like try new things, see how you can be supportive. And even if all you do is once, and just be kind to people. Smile, look them in the eye, say thank you. People are always like this, and the door opens for them and they just walk through, and they're not noticing how wonderful people are around them.
That's great. Notice how wonderful people are around you.
Acknowledge them, see them, thank them, say, like, be polite. Manners are big.
Yes. You can tell I live in LA when I got excited. Yes, feed the change, feed the meter, prevent the parking ticket. But anyway, Sheila, thank you so much for all of your insights and for what you do. And like I said, we're going to link to all the things that you're doing and continue to get the word out about these films that are really creating sustainable change for young people and then rippling through their families. That makes such an impact. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much, Bree. It was so nice to see you again. And well, I'm sure we'll be visiting again. I got 2 more movies on the horizon.
Okay, good. Hi, everyone. This is Bree Jensen from the Social Impact Podcast. I want to say a huge thank you for those of you that joined us today. And maybe you've been following along through every episode. This was episode 7 of our first season. So huge thank you to those of you that are new to us and that are following on social media, as well as sharing out and commenting. If you are looking for any kind of support when it comes to business consulting, business coaching, or you're looking for some digital well-being help, we have a social media and digital well-being for our kids workshop on the website, as well as coaching and consulting for your social impact business. So please go to thesocialimpact.co and feel free to reach out for a free consultation or find that workshop. Also, you can find me on social media at Bree_Jensen_. I love hearing from you and all that you're doing to make an impact in this world. Next time on the Social Impact Podcast, I'm talking with 3 of my incredibly close friends. We are all social entrepreneurs from all over the world. And we're going to be talking about what it's like to be a social entrepreneur, the fun times, the hard times, and all the times. So I will see you next week on the Social Impact Podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing.